Well, after having immense success with his previous work, the question is, can Jean-Marc Vallée repeat that success with another HBO limited series?
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your
Hey guys, it's Kevin with my review for the latest limited series from HBO, Sharp Objects. And what Sharp Objects essentially about is we center on the character of Camille Preaker. She is this reporter who has recently gotten discharged from this mental facility. She also is a raging alcoholic, and basically she ends up taking on this case of these two missing girls, both of which are from her hometown Wingab. She's forced to go there and basically deal with a bunch of sins from her past. She has to deal with a very controlling mother and all these other things that she was hoping to put to bed. And the question is, can she finally turn her life around, but also subsequently solve this murder? And that's really all I'm going to say. So Sharp Objects in general, I was honestly really looking forward to this series, not just because of it being HBO, not just because of it being Jean-Marc Vallée, who, you know, I really loved his work in Big Little Lies and was hoping to see, as I said in the intro, if he could maybe repeat that success here, but just the premise of it and everything that was going on, it looked like the next big hit for HBO. It looked like that summer limited series that I was really going to get into. Every single year, HBO seems to have at least one limited series that works wonders for them. 2016, it was The Night Of. Last year was Big Little Lies. And I'm very happy to report that Sharp Objects does, in fact, continue this trend. This show is fantastic. It is easily one of the most eerie and creepy shows I have seen in the longest time, but also one of the best character-driven shows I have seen in a while. But we're just going to get into all right now, starting off with the cast. And going into this show, that is for sure one of the biggest draws, I think, for anyone, just seeing the cast here and seeing who's in it. And I'm happy to say that the cast absolutely does deliver. I think everyone truly does do a fantastic job. But the standout, without a doubt, in this show is, in fact, Amy Adams, who I don't know if this is necessarily the best performance I've seen from her, but it is for sure one of her best. She completely transforms herself into this character, from not wearing a ton of makeup to being practically covered in head to toe from these scars that have all these like messages that basically are directly linked to her past, to simply just having a different dialect. I mean, Preaker is someone who is very reserved, and she doesn't really seem to interact well with people. There's a lot of stuff she has gone on in her past that she has tried to repress, but unfortunately is forced to deal with, and just the way that she'd react to things, or when she'd be upset about something, it's just incredible to watch. Adams just projected so much emotion into this character and really represented basically every facet possible. We see the very dark side of Camille and the awful things that happen to her as a teenager, but we also see Camille when she's at her best. We see her, you know, in quieter moments with her mother. We see how sometimes out of her element she really does feel. I really do think Adams just brought everything she could to this role. It honestly is a crime that she doesn't have an award at this point, and if she does not at the very least get an Emmy nomination for this performance, I really don't know what I'm going to do. This was everything that I wanted from her. Me at least, I think that in general is commendable enough, and for sure is one of the best performances I have seen all year. But that's not to say the rest of the cast isn't fantastic, because I think everyone else, like I said, really just do a fantastic job, particularly Patricia Clarkson as her mother, Adora. Now, this is a very challenging role, because at the surface, Adora is this very dark, very foreboding mother who seems to have this deep resentment for Camille, to the point where when she shows up at her door, she wants her gone, like, immediately. She doesn't want her back. You know, she's moved on with her life, and you know these two have a very tough relationship, and it's very tenuous in that way. You can tell that there's some sort of seething hatred that these two have for each other, and you don't fully understand it until the show goes on, of course. But on the other hand, you also see the warm spirit that Adora has toward pretty much everyone else. She seems to be someone who really cares about the community, really cares about a bunch of people in Wingap. She actually had a connection to the two girls that were murdered, and you know, you're really trying to understand where she's coming from, and Clarkson does a really great job of bringing a lot of humanity to this character. I feel like a lesser actress, this character would have been a straight-up cartoon, but because Clarkson played the role so beautifully, she did such a great job of making you understand where the character's coming from, not at all condoning the actions of what Adora's doing, because trust me, she does some really fucked up stuff in the show for sure that I'm not going to get into just yet. But she did a very good job, like I said, of just making this character feel a lot more human and making us understand this character more than I think a lesser actress could. And I really did think she did a great job here. Some of the best scenes are just her and Camille talking and them trying to, you know, work out their differences and things like that. But I really did love where she ended up going in the show. She was also fantastic here, and it probably is the best work I've ever seen from her. I think Patricia Clarkson just absolutely killed it here. But someone else who I don't think is getting enough attention is Eliza Scanlen as Camille's stepsister, Emma, Emma's someone who, once again, there's just something really off about her. She's very quiet. She seems to treat herself as the baby of the family and things like that. You know, Adora often coddles her, but she's also very rebellious, and we really don't understand what Emma's going through, things like that, and I really loved getting into her character. Eliza Scanlen is someone that you probably haven't heard of before, but after this show, you absolutely will, because once again, she just gives it her all during this show. Some of the best scenes similar to Adora are just her and Camille talking and them trying to form this relationship, and I really did love where she ended up going in the show. She definitely does not go in the direction you expect, but I really did love that about her character. I thought she was absolutely fantastic here, and these three girls alone are enough of a reason to recommend this show, or just for these three women's performance overall. And the rest of the cast also does an incredible job. I really love Taylor John Smith as the character of John Keene. This is the brother of one of the girls that was murdered that is immediately accused, and I really did love seeing his work throughout the show. Madison Davenport as his girlfriend Ashley is really great. I thought she did a really great job. Will Chase is fantastic here. Chris Messina is so good in this show. You know, even people, Elizabeth Perkins, even some of the smaller performances here, like, for one episode, Sydney Sweeney shows up as this character that, that Camille did bond with at the mental facility, and I really did like her acting in the show. I thought she did a really great job. This really is such a fantastic ensemble, and I honestly couldn't just recommend one performer here. I think truly everyone is at the top of their game here, and it's for sure one of the best ensembles I have seen in any show in 2018 thus far. But now we really do have to get to the directing and the writing, which, like I said, going into the show, that was one of the things I was very excited about, because the directing is done by Jean-Marc Vallée. And what I really loved about his directing here is that, you know, while Big Little Lies had more of a light-hearted sort of satire style, it definitely did get into some dark stuff. It wasn't afraid to go there. Here, this is a completely different tone entirely. It's much darker, it's very eerie, and you really do feel that throughout the entire show. And Vallée just presents a very specific style to this show that, honestly, I don't think can be replicated. It's unparalleled in that way, the way he was able to generate this sense of tension and this sense of eeriness so grand that even when the show is over, you're still kind of feeling it. You're feeling very uncomfortable. At points, you feel like you're watching something you shouldn't be watching. And again, that is definitely a compliment and not at all a problem with this show. I think he just did a great job of just giving this show this feel that I really haven't felt in a horror show since, like, Penny Dreadful and a few years ago. This is very similar to that, but again, Penny Dreadful even was not the sort of sensation that you feel when watching this show, and I think he did such a great job with the directing here. Even some of the quieter moments, you're always feeling uneasy. You're always feeling like something could go wrong and that this could be the thing to, you know, push one of our characters over the edge, and I think he just did such a great job there, and I really love the directing to this show. But the directing aside, I really want to get to the writing here, because this is for sure some of the best writing I have seen in anything. Movie, TV, you know, you name it. I think the writing here is so great, and what I really love about this show is just how patient everything is. This is one of those shows where, yes, it does start off very slow. When we meet Camille, for example, we know a few key things about her. We know that she's an alcoholic. We know that something did happen to her deceased sister that caused her to die. We don't know what exactly it is. We know that she's very much haunted by her childhood. We know that she is a very distant relationship with her mother and Wingap in general. We know that she doesn't really want to be there. We know that she just recently got out of a mental facility. But again, the hows and the whys aren't really there at first. It takes a while for us to really pinpoint, this is why this happened to her. This is why this went down. And I think the show just does such a great job with taking its time. And that's the kind of show that I love. I love shows that don't just spoon feed everything to you. They really do take their time with getting you into this world, getting you into Wingap, which Wingap in general, the way they establish it is so well done, because at the surface, Wingap is this very welcoming, cheery town with tons and tons of nice people and tons of, tons of stuff to remember and things like that. But at the same time, you really want to leave Wingap because you kind of feel trapped there, just as trapped as Camille does, because while everyone does have this warm spirit, all these tragedies keep coming down. Things like sexual abuse and things like just simple, fighting between girls is just seen as normal in this town, and it just feels very off. It feels like there's something weird going on, and you know that there's something much more malevolent at play, and I really did love the way they presented that throughout the show. I thought Wingap in general was just such a well-realized town, and I thought the writing there was so sharp. But going back to Camille, the way we really do explore who she is, I really did love seeing. And the different people that she ends up meeting, a lot of them very much do represent who Camille actually was. Whether it's through two people specifically, first off, you have her stepsister, Emma, who, very similar to Camille, seems to be very reserved, seems to be a little bit off. You don't really know what's going on with her. But at the same time, she's also very rebellious, and you see that she has a real knack for always seeming to find herself in the way of trouble. And you see that Camille really wants to get close to her and really see who she really is and things like that. But then you also have someone like Ashley, for example, someone who is in fact similar to Camille because she used to be a cheerleader, and Ashley also is a cheerleader, and Ashley has this boyfriend. She's basically everything that Camille really wishes that she was, and she's one of the only people to show Camille genuine, genuine courtesy and actually be somewhat decent to her, because everyone else just kind of, they loathe Camille. They really wish that they very much resent her in that way. The town has completely disavowed her, and again, we don't really understand why, and I really did love the way the show did slowly get into that here. And throughout the show, we really do explore a lot of questions about Camille, with her re-entering Wingap. Is she capable of putting her past aside? Is she capable of finding love with this detective that is also aiding the investigation? Is she capable of solving this murder? Does she have a connection to Anne and Natalie? Did something similar happen to her with Anne and Natalie? Can she find the suspect? Can she move on from all this? Is she able to stop her sensation of constantly, cutting herself and things like that? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Camille really does go through, and it's very dense in that way, but I really did love the way the show did present you with these questions, because again, Camille is kind of a blank slate in that way. It's not till the show goes on where we really start to understand, okay, this is where she's coming from. And the same goes for many of the other characters, like John Keane, for example. Throughout a lot of the show, he is our only suspect. He's the only person that everyone seems to think is responsible for this. Why? Because he has this very big regret, and he seems to take a lot of guilt for what happened to his sister Natalie, and he really seems to feel like maybe he is responsible. But as the show goes on, you start to realize that maybe he isn't capable of doing so. Maybe he isn't capable of you know, being the culprits and things like that. And I really did love getting into who he really was. And the show does that with a lot of other characters. Like I said, someone like Adora isn't as, you know, is still just as menacing as she is very welcoming in that sense. It's very scary watching her, you know, you don't really know what she's gonna do. Amma as well, because of the fact that she's so rebellious, you're not really trusting her. There's a lot of characters that are like that here. Someone like Jackie, for example, who is the town gossip and seems to know a lot, always seems to be, you know, always seems to have something really menacing about her, and you don't know what that's all about. I mean, there's a lot of really great character work throughout the show, and I think they did such a great job with that in terms of the writing. I really love getting into that, and like I said, the way that Camille has to deal with a lot of her past here, I really did love getting into. Something like, for example, the character of Kirk Lacey. This is someone who was an active participant in this gang rape that Camille did have to go through, or meeting up with some of her past friends when she had to fake a period because in reality she was just simply cutting herself to take that pain away, and a lot of people thought that it was simply just that she was having her period and things like that, and they're very much hearkening back to those days. Or someone like, you know, like I said, John Keane, someone who is accused simply because he feels guilty, and they don't feel that someone like that could just feel so guilty. There has to be something more to it, and this show really does explore a lot of those things very well, and I really did love getting into that overall. Now, I'd really love to get more into the writing and things like that, but for the sake of spoilers, I'm just gonna get right into the other thing that the show does so well, which is its visual style, which is unlike any other show I think I've seen. You can tell that this show was supposed to be a movie originally. The reason they made it into a show is because they felt the story was simply just too dense for a film, and they really wanted to take their time with it. And I'm very happy that they did, because the style of the show is absolutely incredible, especially because a lot of it is through Camille's perspective. We're really getting into who Camille really is, and a lot of her past is stuff that she really does not want us to see. And for a lot of people, this can be kind of frustrating, because it's a lot of quick glimpses into certain parts of her life. Like I said, those boys that we eventually realized did in fact gang rape her, or her sister, you know, her sister dying or things like that, or her being a cheerleader back in the day. And they're things that they're kind of like blink and you miss it shots, but the way they're presented are very dreamlike in that way, and they're very hazy, and it makes sense with who Camille really is. Like I said, this is not stuff that she really does want to remember. This is not stuff that she does want to see the whole thing. You know, the reason that we only see a brief thing of it is because she's trying to move past it, but because the fact that she's trapped in the town where all of these terrible things happened, she is forced to remember it. She's forced to reconnect with a lot of these people that she was hoping to get away from, and the show really does get into that in a way that I really have not seen many other shows do. I really love the brief glimpses and things like that, but even the style, like the way Wind Gap is, like I said, that's its own character. It's so bright to the point where it feels like something is off. It's so colorful and things like that, and I really loved seeing just how colorful, and you also really do feel the summer vibe of this show. Like, it's always so hot in Wind Gap. Everyone's always talking about it sweating and things like that, and you honestly do feel it. You feel the heat. You feel the pressure of everything that's going on, and I know I'm going to sound really pretentious, but the show did such a great job of putting you into that environment, and I really did love the visual style of the show. It's some of the best I've seen all year. I really love the way we're able to get into Camille's mind. Like I said, the quick glimpses and things like that. I can understand if some people were a bit annoyed that we weren't seeing the full flashback of everything that went down, but again, remember, this is something that Camille wants to forget. She doesn't want to, you know, come face to face with her past, and unfortunately, she eventually has to, and I think they did a very good job with that here. And going back to the cinematography, I mean, like I said, this show is also very dense. It's also very heavily graphic in terms of Camille. Camille is someone who self-harms herself a lot. She, like I said, is covered from head to toe in scars, many of which do give you these sort of messages like burn and, you know, her things like lonely and things like that. Or loser. There's a lot of, like, she's carved a lot of things into her skin, and you can see this is her way of kind of relieving a lot of the pain that she had from the things that did happen to her. This was her way of kind of getting over it. But I really did love how much the show wasn't afraid to show you some really graphic stuff, like Camille cutting herself and seeing Camille covered in these scars. A lot of shows would try to shy away from that, and I'm glad this show didn't. As much as I was wincing a lot of times, which, trust me, the first few episodes are incredibly brutal, and especially the third one. The third episode, what you end up seeing is stuff that you really won't be able to unsee probably for a while, maybe even your entire life. But I'm really glad the show did go there. It's not trying to shy away from what actually happened to Camille, what she's actually going through. It really is getting into the nitty-gritty of how, you know, how unstable Camille really is and how she really is trying to turn that around. And I think they did a very good job with that throughout the course of this show. In terms of the score of this show, is fantastic. I really love the main score that we heard in the trailer and things like that, but I also really love the intro of this show because the intro does something very interesting that I haven't really seen another show do since The Leftovers ended, and very similar to The Leftovers, this show has a different music every single intro. However, unlike The Leftovers, it basically is the same song, it's just done in different genres. Like, one episode, it'll be like the classical style, which is the traditional style that that this song is in. I think it's called Dancin' Angela or something like that. Then it'll be like a hip-hop style. Then it'll be in a an electronic style. And I really did a great job of keeping everything fresh and exciting, and I really did think it was very cool the way they did that. That was definitely one of my favorite parts of the show. I really did love seeing the intro and things like that. And the editing, like I said, the show is very slow paced, and I cannot stress that enough, to the point where some people might be really bored. Some people might not be as interested in what's going on because they're just like, alright, can we just get a move on already? And I've heard a lot of people say that this show should have only been like 4 episodes long, and to that I very much disagree. The first few episodes of the show are really getting us into the town of Windgap, showing who they really are. You know, showing things like Calhoun Day, for example, this day that everyone celebrates, even though that day, when you really think about it, is really fucked up. It's wrought with tragedy. There's a whole play where they're doing this scene where women are getting raped and people are laughing at it. And again, this is a annual occurrence. This is not something that's just going on this year. Every single year they have this Calhoun Day, and I think it was very cool that they did add that in. There's a lot of really great stuff editing-wise, and I really do love the pacing of this show. I honestly was never bored. I was pretty much into it the entire time, and it's mainly just because of how interesting the story really is, and I think because of Windgap being the way it is, and the characters being the way they are, you needed to make this a slow-paced show, or I don't think it would have felt as well-deserved as it did when we got to the eventual reveal of what's actually going on. That being said, this show is not completely perfect, and I really only have one flaw with this show, and it's a very minor one, and that is because there are so many characters, and there is a lot going on in this show. Some, not all, but some of the characters do feel a bit shortchanged, particularly Will Chase's character, the character of Bob Nash. I really like this character at first. He also is a key suspect in what's going on because he was the father of Ann Nash, and he very much feels very guilty. He really wants to know what went down. He blames John Keane for a lot of it, and throughout a lot of the show, we really are getting into his character and his grief and how he really does, you know, like I said, he's taking a lot of the blame for what really did go down. And then a certain scene occurs in episode 6, and then we never see him again. And again, I understand supposed to be from Camille's perspective, and sure, maybe one could say that, oh, that's all we really needed, but I just needed at least one more scene with him. Just in the finale, just give me a scene with him in the finale where Camille maybe checks up on him, asks him how he's doing, because we never really do get that. We never really do get that scene where we understand what, you know, how Bob Nash is doing. His character just does not really have a conclusive ending, and I just needed just a little bit more with that character. All the other characters I thought ended very well, and it made sense why they ended why they did. It's just that one character, especially with where he ends, I thought we were going to see something with him, and we just simply didn't, and I did want just a little bit more there with him overall. Which, with that being said, now guys, we really do have to delve into spoilers. I really do want to talk about everything that is going on in this show, because there's a lot of stuff that I didn't tell you, and that's mainly because I do want you to watch this show. I think this is one of the best of its kind out there. The mystery aspect, while important, is not the most important thing about the show. It's much more of a character study of who Camille really is, and I really do want you guys to get into it for sure. If anything, just for Adam's performance in general, I think is incredible. You know, Patricia, Clarkson, and Eliza, Scanlen are also really great, but definitely watch the show and then come back and we can talk about spoilers. So, just gonna get into it right now. Of course, we have to get into the eventual reveal of the killer. Now, a lot of people are going to be disappointed by this because of the fact that it does come very far out of left field. Throughout a lot of the show, they seem to make us think that Adora is the killer, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because Adora is someone who has what's called Munchausen syndrome, and this is something that I haven't really seen portrayed on TV before. Essentially, the idea of Munchausen syndrome is that you constantly think that you have some sort of mental illness, or that your children as well have inherited it, and that you are a direct cause of it. So because of that, you keep giving them all these remedies, like the poison that she ended up poisoning Marion with, and that's, of course, what we find out that she did kill Marion, or what she ends up doing to Emma, basically so you can make them sick, and you can, you know that you're not crazy, and know that they actually are sick, and it's really fucked up to think about, but it is a very real thing. It's rare for mothers to go through, but it is actually very real, and I think the show did a very good job of portraying someone who is Munchausen, someone who just wants to believe that she is mentally ill, and goes as far as to basically make herself that way, and, you know, goes as far as to give her children all these remedies that will make them sick, and will actually go along with that narrative, and I think it's really interesting the way that's done. Like, again, as fucked up as it is, I do actually think it's really interesting to get inside the head of someone like that, because I really have never seen that portrayed on TV before, and they did a very good job with getting into that. And of course, because Camille finds out what Dora did to Marion, she basically makes the connection that she is the one that murdered Anne and Natalie. And it does make a lot of sense at first, because she had a connection with them, and she probably was trying to make up for a lot of the, a lot of the flaws that she had with Camille. She's trying to fix and basically course correct through Emma and through Anne and Natalie. So a lot of the show we're forced to, we're basically, we're supposed to think that, and I think that they did a very good job with getting us into that, and again, showing what this did to Camille, you know, like with her mom force feeding her, and her mom always criticizing her appearance and things like that. You can really see why she really would do these things, and giving her that Munchausen syndrome, I think, makes a lot more sense when you really do think about it. But of course, then we do get to the ending, where basically it seems like Camille and Emma are now safe. They've gone after, they've gone after Adora and things like that. She's now in jail. Emma is keeping in touch with her because they had this really deep connection. But then, of course, we meet this character of May, and that's when things start to go a little bit downhill, because May, of course, is this person that Emma does end up connecting with. They become really good friends. You know, they start talking about, she starts talking about possibly becoming a newspaper editor, and this is something that Camille is very much into the idea of. But then things do not really go as well for Emma, because we hear this one fight that Emma and May got into, similar to the type of fights we heard about going on in Wingap, with these little fights between girls that, oh, it's about nothing, it's just about nails, it's just about boys, it's nothing to really worry about. But it turns out, no, that's not what's going on, because we see that Camille does go into Emma's dollhouse, and there's teeth inside of it, and of course those teeth are the teeth of Anne and Natalie, so it turns out that Emma is in fact the real killer. And, of course, I have heard a lot of people very unsatisfied by this, saying that this makes no sense whatsoever, and to that I very much disagree. The signs, honestly, were always there. Throughout the entire show, Emma seemed to have a very strange reaction to Anne and Natalie dying. It wasn't that she was necessarily upset about it, but she just kind of seemed indifferent to it all. She didn't really seem like she cared that much. She was such a free spirit, just going along with her friends on roller skates, going to those crazy parties, acting like nothing really changed, even though we knew that she knew Anne and Natalie. She was friends with these two girls, so why was she acting the way she was? It just didn't really make a ton of sense when you really think about it in retrospect. But knowing that Emma is the killer, now it actually makes a lot of sense. And look, I understand some people might be like, well, this doesn't really tie up. They don't really give you all the answers that you need. And I actually really love that they did that. I love that the show didn't just give you everything. Like, it doesn't have the motive, because I feel like the motive was kind of always there, but it was right under Camille's and our noses. We just didn't really notice it till now. And the reason we're not getting that motive is because I think it was incredibly obvious from the start. And I really do love how quickly we cut away from that, where we quickly see how Emma did, in fact, murder Anne, Natalie, and of course May. And I think there's two possible reasons why she could have done this. One, I think in reality, either cause, I think Emma was just as fucked up as Camille. I think she had a different way of showing it, though. You know, we saw her mom going through doing a lot of similar things to her that she did to Camille, with her trying to force feed her, with her trying to prove that she was constantly sick, with her coddling Emma constantly. Except, you know, while Camille would self-harm herself and would always try to, you know, do things to herself in a very violent manner, Emma did that, but instead she decided to inflict it on others and do that to kind of take away her pain and to basically feel that relief by, you know, like I said, hurting or even killing others. So I think that is a possible reason. The other reason is because of the fact that Adora basically was just simply the way she was towards Emma, because Emma was in her stepsister's shadow, that Emma really wanted to be noticed. And not just through Adora, but through Camille. She wanted Camille to notice her. She wanted Camille to know who she really was, and she did these killings as a way to get noticed and as a way for that recognition and to get that attention. And I think that's something that she honestly was always clamoring for. And I think this final moment is when she finally feels like, all right, it's complete. The reason that she murdered May is not just because she needed that floor for her dollhouse, because sure, she did, but I think the real reason she did it is so Camille can finally understand her, understand who she really is, understand who Camille really is, because remember, Emma doesn't really feel that her and Camille are all that different, and that Camille is capable of doing something like that. And it makes a lot of sense when you really do think about it, who Emma really is, the kind of stuff that she was doing, the kind of stuff that she told Camille that she would do, does make a lot of sense in retrospect. And again, it is something you really do have to think about. It's something that isn't just, you know, they don't force feed you everything. It's not something that is completely understandable at first. It really does take a while to think about, but I'm really glad the show did go there, because again, this show treats you like you're smart. It doesn't treat you with this sense of just shoving all the answers down your throat or telling you everything that really happened, and I think that really is what makes the show that much better. I think if Adora would have been the killer, sure, it would have been satisfying, but it's that much more satisfying that Amma is the killer because, again, I think those signs were always there. It was just because we were in Camille's perspective, Camille never really picked up on that. The one person she was trying to save was actually the direct cause of all of the violent things that were going down, and when you really do think about it, it actually does make a lot of sense, and the fact that some people can't seem to make that connection, I don't think I don't think this is a plot hole. I don't think this is something that came out of left field. I do think it actually makes a lot of sense. There's an article I read actually about all of the clues that were there in every single episode that we simply just didn't see, and it really does make me want to go back and rewatch the show, and the fact that the show is able to do that, something that is so dense, and something that, like I said, was very hard to watch at points, I think is commendable enough, and I think is another reason why the show stuck out to me as much as it did. This ending, yes, it is very haunting. Yes, it is somewhat unsatisfying, but when you really do think about it, it actually does make a lot of sense, and I really am glad the show did go here, and not in the predictable direction that a lesser show I think very much would have. And like I said, the thing I also really love about this twist is it does confirm a theory that I had for a while that Amma's gonna end this show just as fucked up as Camille, when it turns out she already was. It's just she had a very different reaction to what her mother was really doing from her. And you start to realize that the show isn't just about Camille's character and her trying to overcome her problems and things like that and trying to abandon her past. It really is about the heritable damage that this has on this family, and how even though it seems like everything is fine, this family's always kind of going to be cursed. They're always going to be going through these things, and that mainly is because of Adora. Adora is still very much the villain here because Adora is what made Amma this way. Adora is what made Amma feel this is acceptable. Amma felt this pain and she felt like she needed to do something about it, while Camille, she attacked herself. She self-destructed herself. Amma, like I said, decided to put her destruction solely on others, and I think they did a very good job with getting into that, and I really do love how we really did not know what this show was about until the last very second. It really does recontextualize everything we knew about these sisters, and I really do love how much the show did that here. And sure, some may say that Amma, being this meticulous killer who went as far as to paint her victims like dolls, is a bit of a stretch, but it's really not, because if you remember in episode 7, Amma was so concerned about that dollhouse and someone touching it, and you realize that that dollhouse, again, was her way of comfort, her way of escapism, her way of kind of going into this world to get away from all that pain, and the way she was able to do that was to act like was to treat people like objects, and the whole term sharp objects, again, it takes on a whole different meaning, and I really did love the way the show was able to do that here. So like I said, guys, Sharp Objects overall is such a fantastic show. It is unlike anything I've seen in quite some time. It's very eerie, it's very creepy, it's honestly very hard to watch at points, but it does have a standout performance from both Amy Adams, Patricia Clarkson, and Eliza Scanlen alike. That alone is enough for reason to watch it. It is a mystery that for some may be very unsatisfying, but again, it's not so much about the mystery, it's the getting there, and getting into these characters' heads, and seeing how they really deal with these tragedies, and I really do love how the show was able to do that. It has imagery that is unlike anything I've seen, just quick, blink and you'll miss it glimpses of things, and I think they did a very good job with that. The score is very haunting, and the imagery itself also is very haunting. The editing, it's a very slow-paced show, and for some, that may be a problem, but for me, that just really added to the pure density of what was really going on in this show. It truly is unlike anything that I've seen before. Well, I don't know if I'd say anything I've seen before, but it definitely does stand out in terms of HBO's limited series. It for sure shows the talent that Jean-Marc Vallée has, and it really does make me hope that Amy Adams goes on to finally win that Emmy for sure. It's not just made for her to win an award, it actually does have a very interesting story to tell. It's not going to be the easiest watch. It might be something that you might need to rewatch a couple times before you finally do get a concise, you know, feelings about how you really are, how you really do feel about the show. But the fact that it is frustrating people, and the fact that it is such a maddening watch, I think makes it that much better, and for me, makes it that much more recommendable to you guys, and I think in general is something that you definitely should watch. It's for sure one of my favorite shows of summer. It might honestly be my favorite. It will definitely be in my top 10 summer shows for sure. It's definitely one of the best things I have seen all year. It is one of the highest recommendation. HBO for sure has another hit on their hands, and I am definitely going to give Sharp Objects overall in A. Seriously, guys, check this out as soon as possible. I have not heard enough people talk about this show. I did have one friend that watched this show, thankfully, but other than that, I really have not heard many people talk about it, and I really do hope this show does get the audience that it deserves, because it truly is something really unique and different, and I really do hope you guys check it out. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.